The president is uneducable. He cannot learn. He apparently stopped learning as soon as his father stopped teaching him the real estate business. Someone in the White House might have tried to teach the president the good news and the bad news about having a special prosecutor appointed to investigate his connections to Russia and to investigate possible obstruction of justice by the Trump administration and, of course, by the president himself. The bad news is a special prosecutor is investigating you. The good news is every question that anyone asks from that point forward about the widening scandal that required the appointment of a special prosecutor can be answered simply by saying, I can't comment on anything related in any way to an ongoing investigation. Next question. A president gets to do that with every question anyone asks once a special prosecutor has been appointed. And the news media has to accept that answer. They have always accepted that answer. I mean, they keep asking the questions, but they accept the answer, and then they move on to questions about your tax proposal or your health care bill. But because the president is uneducable, and because the major law firms in Washington refuse to defend him in his current predicament, and he is stuck with the most incompetent lawyer who has ever defended a president in trouble, today, the president said this.
Would you be willing to speak under oath to give your version of
100%.
There's the president making a public commitment to the country, to his voters, that no good lawyer would allow him to do. When the time comes that the president is asked to deliver testimony under oath about what he said alone in a room with James Comey, he will do everything he can to avoid giving that testimony under oath. He will break that 100% promise. He will claim executive privilege. He will fight it in court. And what we don't know is what he will do if he is ordered by the Supreme Court to give that testimony under oath. The president still might refuse to give that testimony. He might defy a Supreme Court order because the president is not a constitutionalist. The president is not a man of the law. The president is Donald Trump. The president does not know that the Supreme Court can give him orders, him personally, as the Supreme Court did with President Nixon. The Supreme Court ordered President Nixon to turn over evidence that ended his presidency. Donald Trump was paying no attention to that because it happened during that period of his life where he was concerned, according to previous testimony given to Howard Stern, with nothing other than how much sex he could have with how many women. He told Howard Stern that the risk of venereal disease during those years was, quote, my personal Vietnam. Vietnam, of course, being the war that he was avoiding during those years because of a note he obtained from a doctor saying that his feet were just no good for anything other than marching around golf courses for the rest of his life. And if President Trump defies a direct order by the Supreme Court, we will have arrived at a constitutional crisis that could only be resolved through the impeachment process that would then have to be initiated in a House of Representatives that is currently led by the most spineless speaker that has ever been confronted with an investigation of a president. The president had more to say today about James Comey's testimony yesterday.
I hope, this is the president speaking, I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He is a good guy. I hope you can let this go. Now, those are his exact words. Is that correct?
Correct. I didn't say that.
In fact, he asked specifically of loyalty in the context of asking me to stay.
There'd be nothing wrong if I did say it, according to everybody that I've read today, but I did not say that.
No president is known to have regularly recorded conversations in the White House since Richard Nixon was forced to resign his presidency because of the criminal conduct revealed on the tape recordings of his White House conversations. Recording White House conversations turned out to be the single worst idea any president ever had about how to run his White House. It is a uniquely painful issue in the history of the presidency. The secret tape recordings of President Nixon's conversations are an ugly scar on the presidency. Every president since Nixon has known that, except the uneducable president. And so President Trump thinks the notion of secretly recording his conversations in the White House is something he can publicly throw around. When James Comey's version of his conversations with the president first became public, the president tweeted, "James Comey better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press." James Comey testified yesterday that that very tweet from the president convinced him that he needed to make his conversations with the president fully public as soon as possible. It was one of the many impulsive Trump tweets that have caused more harm than the president is capable of anticipating because, you know, childish minds are at their very weakest when it comes to anticipating predictable results of their impulsive actions.
Do tapes exist of your conversations with him?
Well, I'll tell you about that maybe sometime in the very near future.
You seem to be hinting that there are recordings of those conversations.
I'm not hinting anything. I'll tell you about it over a very short period of time.
When is that?
Okay? Okay. Do you have a question here?
When will you tell us about the
Over a
recordings?
fairly short period of time.
Tomorrow? Now? Are there tapes, sir?
Oh, you're going to be very disappointed when you hear the answer.
No, Mr. President, a majority of Americans are very disappointed that the anti-democratic defects of the Electoral College gave the presidency to a man who won 3 million fewer votes than the woman who won the most votes, and that president shows no comprehension or even awareness of America's ugly history of secretly recorded presidential conversations. This afternoon, the House Intelligence Committee revealed that it has sent 2 evidence requests. First, the committee wrote to former Federal Bureau of Investigation Director James Comey to request any notes or memoranda in his possession memorializing discussions Comey had with President Trump. Second, the committee wrote a letter to White House counsel Don McGahn requesting that he inform the committee whether any White House recordings or memoranda of Comey's conversations with President Trump now exist or have in the past. That, of course, suggests the possibility that those recordings existed and have been destroyed. The committee is demanding an answer by June 23rd. That deadline implies that the committee will subpoena that same information if it is not provided voluntarily by the White House. It is a virtual certainty that the special prosecutor has already subpoenaed or will soon subpoena any White House recordings or memoranda of James Comey's conversations with the president. Those subpoenas will come as a surprise to no one in the White House except the man who says he spent the Nixon years in his own personal Vietnam.